Same company, same job, 31 years each. Same last Friday. Two men walk out and get the same letter from the pension office, and it offers them the same choice. Take $2,000 a month for the rest of your life, or take $350,000 right now in one payment, rolled into your own retirement account. Frank takes the monthly checks. He says he wants to sleep at night. Gary takes the lump sum. He says he wants control of his own money. Neither of them is being reckless. Neither of them is being naive. Both can give you a reason that sounds correct, and both of those reasons are reasons a financial advisor would actually give them. 14 years later, one of these men has run out of money, and the other has not. And the thing that separated them was not the choice you think it was. Let's keep this fair, because most videos on this do not. Frank and Gary are the same age, 65. Same health. Same life expectancy. They retire into the same market on the same day, so nobody gets a luckier decade. Gary does not blow the money. He does not buy a boat. He does not lend it to his son-in-law. He does not put it all in one stock. He rolls the entire $350,000 into a retirement account and invests it the way a reasonable person would. And Gary withdraws exactly $2,000 a month, not a dollar more, the same income Frank gets. We assume the market returns 7% a year and inflation runs 3% a year, which are the numbers most retirement calculators use. So there is no trick here and no hidden spending problem. One more thing, and it matters. Both men are single. A joint and survivor election lowers the monthly check and moves every number in this video, and that one deserves its own video. The only difference between these two men is the shape their money arrives in. Socially, this is not a close contest. Gary is the winner. Gary has a statement with $350,000 printed on it. He can log in and look at it whenever he wants. When his brother-in-law asks how retirement is going, Gary says he is managing his own portfolio, and that sounds like a man who did something smart. Frank gets a direct deposit, $2,000, the same every month, from a company he does not work at anymore. There is no statement to look at. There is nothing to manage. At Thanksgiving, Frank sounds like a man who took the safe option because he was afraid, and Gary sounds like a man who took control. This matters more than people admit, because most retirees are not choosing with a spreadsheet in front of them. They are choosing which version of themselves they want to be. So let's run the actual math. And before the first number, here is what almost every video on this subject gets wrong, including ones made by people with real credentials. They treat Gary's risk as if it is spread evenly across the next 30 years. It is not. Gary's entire risk is stacked into the first 60 months. A bad 5 years at the start of retirement and a bad 5 years at the end of retirement are not the same event. They are not even close. Same losses, same market, same average return across the whole period, and one of them is survivable, while the other one ends the plan. This is the part that does not feel intuitive, because we are trained to believe markets average out, and over 30 years they do. But Gary is not simply holding, he is withdrawing while he holds. And that changes everything about when the damage lands. Start with the number the pension office does not put in the letter. Frank is getting $24,000 a year. The lump sum offered was $350,000. Divide one by the other, and that pension is paying out at 6.86% a year, for life, guaranteed. If you have a letter like this in front of you, pause and do it with your own numbers. Yearly income divided by the lump sum. Write that number down. Everything after this is about where your number sits. Now compare that to the withdrawal rate the entire retirement industry calls safe, the 4% rule. 4% of $350,000 is $14,000 a year. That is $1,167 a month. Frank is getting $2,000. So the pension is handing Frank about 71% more annual income than the standard safe withdrawal rate would let Gary take from the exact same pile of money. That inverts the whole premise. The lump sum is not the bigger offer. It is the smaller one, wearing a bigger number. But 6.86% is not impossible, and I am not going to pretend it is. If the market truly returns 7% every single year, and Gary pays almost nothing in fees, his account survives. Running it month by month, a low-cost index fund charging 0.05% leaves Gary, the man with the statement, with $224,275 at age 95, after paying himself the exact same $720,000 Frank collected. That is a real win. Same income, and $250,000 still sitting there. So on smooth math, Gary is right and Frank left money on the table. Hold on to that, because it is the strongest version of Gary's case, and I wanted to build it before taking it apart. The problem is that every word in it is doing heavy work. Every single year. Almost nothing in fees. Smooth. Here is what comes out of Gary's account before the market even shows up. Advisor fees. 1% a year on assets under management is the industry standard, and that alone turns a 7% return into 6. Fund fees. The average actively managed fund inside that account takes another 0.5% on top. Rollover mistakes. Miss the 60-day window on an indirect rollover, and the entire balance becomes taxable income in a single year. State income tax. A number of states exempt pension income from state tax, and tax retirement account withdrawals in full. So in those states, Frank keeps more of the exact same dollar than Gary does, every year, for life. The federal guarantee. Frank's checks are insured by a government agency up to a limit. Gary's account is insured by nobody. And one that is not a fee at all. Gary now has to make a market decision every year for 30 years, in his 80s, possibly alone. Now the part I promised. Take 5 bad years. Down 12, down 20, up 5, down 8, up 12. That is an ordinary bear market with a partial recovery, not a catastrophe. Put those 5 years anywhere inside Gary's 30, and fill the other 25 years so the full 30-year average lands on exactly 6% either way. Nothing changes except when the bad years arrive. Both versions are the same portfolio, with the same advisor taking the same 1%, across the same 30 years. The only thing I am changing is the calendar. If that stretch hits Gary, the man with the statement, at 90, he still has $353,483 at 95. If the identical stretch hits him at 66, his account is empty at 79. Same 5 numbers, same average, same 30 years. $353,483 of difference, created by nothing but the calendar. If I stopped here, I would be every other channel telling you the lump sum is a trap and the pension is safe. So let me make Frank's side honest too. Frank, the man with the direct deposit, gets $2,000 a month with no cost of living adjustment, which is standard in private plans, and it is brutal. At 3% inflation, Frank's check still reads $2,000 at age 90, but it buys what $955 buys today. His purchasing power is cut roughly in half by 88, and Frank cannot leave that pension to his children. The day he dies, it stops, and there is nothing to inherit. Gary, in the good version, hands his family $250,000. Frank hands them a final month's check and a thank you letter. Both of those things are true at the same time, and Frank's loss is not small. Add up what inflation takes from him. Across 30 years, Frank collects $720,000 in nominal money. But in today's purchasing power, that is worth $470,411. Inflation quietly removes $249,589 from Frank's retirement, and it never sends him a statement about it. So both men are carrying a bomb. Frank's bomb is slow, certain, and backloaded. It does almost nothing in the first 5 years, and most of its damage after 80. Gary's bomb is fast, random, and front-loaded. It does all of its damage in the first 60 months, or it does none at all. That is the real comparison. Not which pile is bigger, which failure you can survive. First, where 6% comes from, because I am not handing you a number I did not earn. It is simply what Gary's portfolio nets after the 1% fee comes out of a 7% market. The question is only whether the plan offers more than your own money can produce. So here is when each one wins, specifically. Take the monthly pension if the payout rate is above about 6%, if you do not have a separate portfolio large enough to absorb a bad decade, if your spouse needs survivor income, or if you know you would hire someone at 1% to manage the rollover. That 1% by itself drains the account to zero by 95, instead of leaving you anything. Take the lump sum if the payout rate the plan offers is below about 5%, if you already have guaranteed income covering your fixed costs, if your health makes reaching 79.5 unlikely because that is the age where the pension simply repays the lump sum in raw dollars, or if leaving an inheritance genuinely matters more to you than your own security does. Frank and Gary were never choosing between two amounts of money. They were choosing which risk to hold. Frank sold his upside to buy a floor. Gary sold his floor to buy an upside. And the real trap is neither the pension nor the lump sum. The real trap is that the pension office hands you this letter with a deadline on it, usually 30 to 90 days. And almost nobody inside that window asks the one question that actually decides it. Not how big is the check. Not what is the market going to do. The question is, what does the payout rate come out to when you divide the yearly income by the lump sum? And where does that number sit against 6%? If you cannot answer that, you are not making a decision. You are picking whichever number looks bigger. So which one were you about to pick?